McDonald's employees, just fast food employees in general, go through a lot. I think they need to be paid more. Let's take a look at some of the weirdest, grossest, and scariest stories McDonald's employees have shared. Alright, this online user said, "My friend used to work there and quit after this particular day. There was a kid's birthday party in the play area. A fat kid ate a lot of ice cream cake and decided to play in the ball pit. Apparently, there were like a dozen kids in this pit when all of a sudden they were getting out and had stains on their shirt. What looked like this fat kid playing under the balls was him actually ducking under to puke. They caught him doing it and immediately asked him to leave. Now, picture this. The kid pukes in multiple locations in a ball pit with a dozen other kids running around and mixing them around. The entire ball pit had puke spread throughout it. When her manager asked her and two other people to clean it up, she flat out quit. And you know what? I don't blame her. Yeah, I would not do that either." The user added, "We still bother her about it today and even put one of these plastic balls on top of her birthday cake last year just to mess with her." Next up, this Reddit user said, "Two of my managers, neither of which were well liked, had hooked up and devised a master plan to rob the place. They set it up so that she would be the night manager on shift, part of whose job it is to count up everything in the safe at the end of the night and bag it for the bank deposit. He, with pantyhose over his face, pretended to be some random criminal barging into the back, claiming he had a weapon and barking orders, and then she would comply with his demands and give him the money." The employee continued by saying, "I don't know how drunk they were when they came up with this plan, but didn't stop to consider that everybody in the kitchen would immediately recognize them. I mean, you can make your voice deeper or whatever, but everybody knows it's still you, and your build and body language, it's not rocket science. It's somebody you work with every day. How did they think his pantyhose would do anything at all?" And this next online user wrote, "I worked there over 10 years ago, and the thing that really stands out in my mind was the day we had a guy die in the dining room. He was an older guy who I'm pretty sure was homeless. He would always come in, buy a sausage biscuit and coffee and chill in the dining room for hours at a time, sometimes from when we opened until after lunch started. So we were told by the store manager to keep his receipt, and if he was there for longer than 2 hours to let him know. Well, this particular morning, he was in my line. He ordered, I gave him his food, pocketed his receipt, and away he went. I promptly forgot about him. After about an hour, a patron approached me and said, 'Hey, there's a guy here who doesn't look so good.' I took off around the corner and saw this poor guy slumped over in a booth next to the kids' train tables. I ran back, told my manager, he booked it, and tried to shake the guy awake as he was infamous for sleeping, and got nothing. My manager told my store manager, who was on the phone, 'Rick, I think someone died in one of the booths.' And Rick ended his conversation like a boss with, 'Listen, I gotta go. I've got a dead guy in my lobby. Yes, I'm serious.'" That one's really sad. Man. This next user posted back in 2008, "I was working with this crazy, silly fry cook named Trevor. Trevor was funny and did his job really well, but one day he just decided that on his hourly smoke break that he would go out to his car, do a shot of Patron and some illegal substances. He started this cycle at 5 p.m. until 11 when we closed. 10:59, we get an order come in through the drive-thru. Trevor messed up the huge $50 order and lost his mind. He took the bagged food and threw it out the window into the customer's vehicle and then shut and locked the window. Then he started accusing everyone of messing up the order. He punched a coworker, then he punched a giant dent into our ice cream dispenser, then he punched me, then knocked over a giant tub of sweet tea, and then began beating our metal front counter like a monkey. I stood up, cleaned my bloody nose, and punched out. I wasn't getting paid enough for that. That night I called the district manager and reported Trevor. Trevor got fired, as did the manager. Weeks, if not months later, Trevor started calling the store, harassing me. Months later, Trevor's girlfriend was a manager at the McDonald's across town. He convinced her to steal from the safe. She stole $2,000 and Trevor used it to buy illegal substances. $2,000 worth. Trevor and his girlfriend are caught, and last I heard they were doing some serious time for the amount of theft and drugs they possessed. This user posted, When I was in high school, I worked at a McDonald's. Great job for a teenager, and most of the time had a lot of fun. However, one night scarred me for life. An old man came in about 20 minutes before close one night and ordered 5 fish fillet sandwiches. That's never good. He sat down and ate every one. When he finished, he calmly got up and entered the bathroom. Also not good. My friend and I, who were cleaning the lobby, hear something that resembles an explosion. Alright, but the old man calmly exits and leaves the premises with a cheerful good night, so we assume all's well. Now it is time to clean the bathrooms, and my buddy and I flip a coin. He then gets his cleaning supplies to do his duty. As soon as he opens the bathroom door, he runs out gagging. There was poop everywhere, all over the stall, floor, ceiling. There was poop in the urinal, and a smiley face of feces smeared on the mirror. To this day, I cannot figure out how such a small man could projectile poop over 12 feet, but can only guess it was a skill that took years of training to hone. The power of the fish fillet. Unfortunately, I can relate to this story. It reminds me of something that happened when I used to work at a gym, but a story for another time. All right, this next one is pretty horrific. We used to have a cleaner who was known for being weird. He was very quiet, and when he did talk, it was only about TV shows. He was generally avoided by most people and left to clean the lobby. One day, a couple of kids started throwing chips at him. We don't know exactly what happened, but he snapped and grabbed one of them and full-on punched her in the nose. He was pulled off her, and she was rushed to the hospital with a broken nose. Obviously, it was clear he was to be fired, so they set up a meeting for the next day to formally dismiss him. Ever since he'd been working at our store, only one person really tried to be his friend. Her name was Jackie, and she was one of the managers and generally well known for being friendly. So Jackie was his friend, and unfortunately, she was the manager on duty when he had his freakout, which meant she had the deciding vote on whether to fire him. Of course, there was no doubt that he had to be let go, and she gave the go-ahead to fire him. The next day, his meeting came and they gave him the bad news. He apparently said nothing and left the store without another word, ignoring Jackie's apologies. Later that day, he came back into the store, and in front of the entire restaurant of people, he pulled a kitchen knife from his backpack and stabbed Jackie repeatedly in the throat. She died on the shop floor with her colleagues trying their hardest to keep her alive until the ambulance arrived. As you can imagine, half the staff quit there and then, and the store was shut down for good for a few months. All right, this next user wrote, last year we had a guy come in on a Saturday morning. It was fairly quiet and I was working in the cafe section. Everyone was doing prep, so we didn't really notice him walk in until we heard a huge thud on the front bin. The guy had a sledgehammer and smashed the top of the bin, and I immediately ran to the other side of the counter where the drive-thru is, and he smashed the counter of the cafe. He ended up breaking a window too, but it's all a bit of a blur. You could see that he was drugged up and we couldn't have called the cops faster. The manager that had to make sure that he didn't leave and didn't hurt anyone is absolutely the bravest person I know, because that guy was mental. Yeah, go figure. This poor online user said, on just my 4th shift and about 2 hours into it, I suddenly had to run to the toilet and began throwing up. After about 10 minutes, I went downstairs and told my manager what had happened, to which he replied, well, what do you want me to do about it? I need you here. Throughout the day, I must have run to the toilet to be sick around 8 times in the space of 3 hours. I looked pale and could barely even walk, yet my manager refused to send me home. And even yelled at me at one point for having to run to the bathroom and leave him. It wasn't until I was basically passed out when they finally sent me home. And this one reminds me of when I used to work at a restaurant. Once again, a tale for another time. This next Reddit user commented the following. Started as a fairly average Monday morning, began my shift as usual and watched over the kids. For the most part, there weren't too many incidents. A couple of kids got into a small fight, but we usually don't step in unless it's anything serious. Anyway, it was getting kinda late and I only had an hour left. 2 kids got into a pretty big argument. Lots of hair pulling, pushing, etc. I didn't really bother to do anything because it looked like their parents noticed anyway. One of the kids was fairly older than the other one, and the mother of the younger kid was pretty pissed off that her kid was being bullied. The mother of the older kid was your typical lazy parent who doesn't care about what their child gets up to and insisted it wasn't her problem. Now, the mother of the younger kid looked extremely pissed off. She told the other mom that she should bother to raise her kid properly and said that her daughter should give her child an apology. The mother just shrugged it off and turned away. Apparently, the mother of the younger girl did not like that, because within seconds, she had grabbed her by the hair and slammed her face into one of the plastic slides. The rest of the kids simply watched in horror as the mother proceeds to push the woman headfirst into the ball pit while desperately trying to kick her in the head. The last thing I saw, she jumped up and tried to elbow drop her, pro wrestling style. I quickly got my manager, who called the police. The mother was thrown into the police car, and I'm pretty sure they had to get an ambulance for the other woman. Needless to say, the place was closed early that day. I didn't reopen it for almost a week. All right, well, pretty extreme reaction, but you know what? Parents, don't let your kids bully other children. Someone just might bully you right back. All right, warning, this next one gets pretty gross, which is saying a lot after that fish fillet fiasco. An online user posted, "Kid vomited and proceeded to pick up fistfuls of chunks and throw them at other children, who then vomited." I'm on the verge reading this. "We closed the place for like 2 weeks to have the whole thing heavy duty cleaned and sterilized by a higher out company. A woman came in and got mad that her kids couldn't play. She yelled, 'I'll show you clean,' ripped the hazard tape off the door, broke the lock on the door, and proceeded to put her finger down her throat and barf all over. The last thing I heard, she was trying to sue our owner, stating that the chemicals in the place, which she broke into, made her so sick she was hospitalized." What? People, like, terrify me. They really, really do. Oh. Anyway, my hat goes off to anyone working in the customer service industry. Keep fighting the good fight, folks. Which story do you think was the worst? Let us know down in the comments. I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.